Welcome into the PFF NFL Podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. We are live on YouTube. We've been doing this every Monday, so appreciate everybody who tunes in live on YouTube. And, of course, welcome to everybody out there listening via the traditional way on podcast. Sam, how you doing on this Monday morning?
Doing good, Steve. Yeah, afternoon now.
Yeah.
We're slacking today.
We are.
We're dragging this into the afternoon, but I'm doing good. You?
I'm doing great. It's a big, busy week. We're trying to cram a lot in here during Thanksgiving week, but excited. Going to get this podcast out. We're going to try to get the preview podcast out for everybody if you guys are traveling for Thanksgiving. So stick with us all week. We got a big show today. We got to discuss the Saints. Unbelievable again yesterday. Are they, easily the best team in the NFL? Everybody's talking about Rams-Chiefs and this big matchup on Monday Night Football, but the Saints looking like the best team in the NFL. Do the Chicago Bears, our friends over in Chicago, do they have the best defense in the NFL? Did Sam actually hit his Thursday night prediction? We got a lot to get to in the show. Let's start with that. Our usual Thursday night prediction. We can't hit every single one, right?
Yeah. To be fair,
you were very specific with that.
I was. It was a gamble, and it was one that might have paid off if they'd gone for it on fourth down.
Yeah.
They didn't. They
They did not.
away. They played the numbers that all said the exact opposite of what they actually did. Was the way to go.
So this is the Green Bay Packers. They lose 27-24 with about 4 minutes left. They've got a 4th and 2.
Yep.
They punt.
Mm-hmm.
It's at their own 35. And it's funny because when people say going for it is risky, I mean, the definition of risky is the odds are not in your favor, right? I mean, that's essentially the definition.
I mean, everything is a risk, right? It's just which risk has the better chance of paying off.
But when you actually run numbers on should they have gone for it, the risky part is punting.
Yeah.
So everybody always says going for it is, risky and, aggressive.
Both sides are risky. The whole point in all of this is to play the numbers, as Mike McCarthy said they did. The point is running the numbers to find out which numbers say or which option the numbers say is actually a better chance of coming off. It's still a risk because it's not a sure thing. It's a probability deal, but it has a higher probability of working out than the alternative. Right. They didn't do that. They just punted the ball away.
Yeah, so this was a weird game, too, because you had the previous play before they punted, 3rd and 2. Aaron Rodgers has a wide-open pass in the flat that he underthrows. He was talking about it after the game. He said the ball just stuck to his hand, essentially. So he missed a wide-open throw. But he also made 2 of the most ridiculous throws of the season in that game. Under pressure, deep ball that he hits in stride, and then the play rolling to his right for almost a 60-yard touchdown, again, in stride. I mean, he's creating – when we talk about big-time throws lead to scoring chances. On drives that have a big-time throw, you score like 65% of the time. This was one of those games where literally 3 throws that Aaron Rodgers made just led to scoring opportunities for the Packers because those throws were so good.
That touchdown to tight end Robert Tonyan, hands up if you saw that coming.
Deep threat, Tonyan.
Right. That throw was absolutely ridiculous. And that is why, remember way back when we had this conversation about strongest arms in the league and raised Aaron Rodgers as one of those people. And it's because of throws like that, which is, I mean, he didn't really have either of his feet under him at the time he launched that throw. It was all arm. It was from a ridiculous non-platform. If there was any foot under him, it was his wrong foot. And yet somehow managed to whip the ball around with his arm only, put it like 60 yards in the air, leading the guy to the right spot. It wasn't like it was underthrown. It just got there. Like a well-thrown pass, all arm. There just aren't many quarterbacks in the league that can make that throw, even ones who have a conventionally strong arm. And you think, well, if he's got his base under him, he can fire a bullet. But there aren't many guys who can make that throw. It was pretty ridiculous.
I say this a lot, the beauty of the PFF system, I think, and why you don't just look at air yards and all that stuff. There are passes where there are straight-up jump balls where the receiver bails out the quarterback that I feel like we capture in our grades. This is the opposite. This is a receiver with like barely a step of separation, and Aaron Rodgers puts the ball in a place where he could convert it into just a long touchdown because of the throw, and the grades properly show that. So in a game where Aaron Rodgers has the highest grade on the Green Bay offense, he also struggled in the fourth quarter when they needed to come back, and a 91.2 overall grade. So we're not silly enough to say, well, Aaron Rodgers isn't clutch and he can't do this or whatever, but It was just a weird game where they're only in the game because of his incredible play. But in a game that you expect him to maybe lead the comeback too, he's missing throws that he shouldn't miss. It was an ugly finish again for Rodgers, who has had a couple of those games this year in the fourth quarter where he just hasn't been able to pull out the magic that we've seen in the past.
Right, and even through his career, there's that thread of a lot of times just doesn't quite get it done.
Right.
There's the Aaron Rodgers haters, of which there is a vocal sect, always jump on those games.
Right.
It's like, well, where are those? So it does seem to keep raising its head every now and again.
And Russell Wilson on the other side, another classic Russell Wilson game against Green Bay. Some bad decisions, some poor throws, and then he just goes, dime after dime down the stretch and makes the plays in the fourth quarter. He hadn't been making them as much this year, but he's been pretty good down the stretch.
He was like the opposite, right? He left a lot of plays on the table in this game.
Yes, overthrown multiple touchdowns.
Right, missed a touchdown, missed another couple of easy throws. But then, whereas Aaron Rodgers struggled in the fourth quarter, he came alive in the fourth quarter, was making all those throws. And really, that's what ends up defining it, right? He must have played well because he got it done in the fourth quarter. Rodgers got it done for 3 of the 4, and then didn't quite get it done the 4th, so he sucked.
I mean, I think there's something to the fourth quarter stuff over time. The best quarterbacks are going to be really good at it. But as far as this goes, I've heard people describe Packers fans as should be rooting for disaster here, rooting for the upheaval of the coaching staff and, some fresh blood in there for Mike McCarthy. I don't know if we're at that point or not, but I would be interested to see Aaron Rodgers in a different scheme and, just fresh ideas around him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that scheme does appear to have – it doesn't – when you look at the difference between that scheme and, say, the Rams, the two teams that are going to play tonight, the Rams and the Chiefs, just the sheer creativity involved in getting their skill position players open, getting those guys into favorable situations is evident on seemingly every single snap.
Right.
And that's why even though those guys on paper don't necessarily have incredible weapons top to bottom, particularly the Rams, they're incredibly successful. And those guys are having career years, and they're playing better than they've ever played before because the scheme puts them against linebackers one-on-one regularly. The scheme does a whole bunch of stuff that enables them to have success. And then you look at the Packers scheme, and it doesn't really do that. It just sends them out there and runs the plays they have and expects them to get open doing it. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't.
It's not like Aaron Rodgers never has open receivers, though. We've seen when he's taken a step back in recent years, it's been because he's passing up open receivers within the scheme and trying to make plays outside of it. So I'd be interested, too, to see him in a scheme where it is a little bit more friendly. Will he play within structure, or does he just love out of structure that much? I see you looking at the standings over there. Where do you have the Packers now?
Well,
is it completely out of it, or do they go, well, actually, we're just going to win out again?
I mean, I don't think they're completely out of it, but Chicago winning last night really put a dent in anything they wanted to do. If the Vikings had won and they were 6-3-1, and the Bears were 6-4, the Packers would be 2 games back essentially, but not done. Now you're in a hole. I mean, they're 3 wins behind the Chicago Bears. It's going to be a pretty big mountain to overcome.
And Seattle's just lurking around.
Well, they're going to do what we said, right? They're going to end up with actually a reasonable record, but they're probably going to miss out on the playoffs because they have to play the Rams twice.
Right. So that's Thursday Night Football. We've got some, just to acknowledge the live chat on YouTube here, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from another Sam asking, do you think Ireland can win the World Cup as we lose all of our football followers?
Can? Yes.
Will they?
They've never made it past the quarterfinal before now. So
it's a different team. It's a different team this year.
It is.
It's a perfect blend of veteran leadership and youth.
Yes.
They're coming off a huge win over New Zealand this weekend.
They are.
Massive.
Yes.
We were texting about it all weekend. I know you were very excited. Ireland is the favorite to win the World Cup. That's my analysis.
That's what
Sam.
Steve Hansen says. I don't think you can make them favorites, but at this point, they've proven that they should be going into a World Cup wanting to win it.
Well, you should always want to win.
Well, wanting and expecting and thinking there's a realistic opportunity of that happening. This idea of we get past the quarterfinals is a good thing. Not anymore. They need to think final and win.
Okay, fair. All right, let's get to the rest of the action through the weekend. Let's start with the Saints. Are the Saints the best team in the NFL.
They could be, yeah.
That's not
You
very
came
emphatic.
in. I was sitting here in the offices on the couch watching the football. And you walked into the office after that and declared that we had to put this game on the TV instead of the Broncos and the Chargers game.
Yeah, because
in addition
Eagles
to it being
Saints,
on Red Zone.
Eagles Saints are a much more
You
topical.
said it was a much more important game to be watching. We had to see that. There was no chance that the Broncos could win their game, but we
Right.
had to watch the Eagles and Saints.
That's correct.
And we proceeded to watch this one-sided ass-kicking for the next
Well, that's what
few
we need to do
quarters.
because that's what we're talking about today.
So
Because the
watched-
Broncos have no chance.
we watched this ridiculous one-sided game where the Saints just stomped the life out of the Eagles.
Yeah, we needed to see it.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
It was ugly. I mean, I think this was a bigger indictment of the Eagles than it was an endorsement of the Saints.
Really?
We knew the Saints were good, but this exposed all of the failings of this Philadelphia team in one game and just kept hammering on that until time was up.
I don't know, but the Saints, I've mentioned it, a couple podcasts ago, whatever. They're winning games kind of like we've seen the Patriots do for many years now in just dominant form across the board.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the Patriots always do that, but the way the Saints are playing right now,
They even ran the score up the way the Patriots do.
they played football, Sam. It's just playing football.
Sure. 4th and 7.
Yeah, because
minutes
honestly, the only way that the Eagles get back in that game is like a blocked punt, a fluke play, so you just play football. You just go for it. You play football, and then it's the job of the defense to stop the offense.
Yeah.
This whole idea that you have to run the ball to show sportsmanship is just
I didn't say run the ball.
just get out of here.
It
No,
was
the people are
4th and
complaining.
7.
They're not
They took a
classy.
deep shot for a touchdown.
The only chance that the Eagles have to get back in that game is a fluke blocked punt or something like that. So you go for it. Chuck it deep. Sorry they can't stop Drew Brees in this offense. Sorry, Eagles fans.
Because nothing bad can happen on 4th and 7 when you're going for it.
Correct.
Okay.
Compared to like a blocked punt or a
Yeah.
blocked field goal. So just play football. The Saints are dominating across the board.
The Saints' offense is pretty scary. So their offensive line is extremely good. And this was with Jamon Bushrod at left tackle, not even with Teron Armstead.
Well, the quick passing game, Brees got
Right,
hit.
so that
Bushrod
helps.
gave up a little bit. The quick passing game can protect him.
Yeah, that's going to help. But the offensive line is really good. Drew Brees obviously is extremely good. He's the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. He's got a fantastic plethora of weaponry. Michael Thomas is his favorite target of his career. He has never thrown the ball at one player as much as he throws it at Michael Thomas now.
Highest target share.
Yeah, number 1 and number 2 throughout Drew Brees' career. So you think back to Marcus Colston, to Devery Henderson, all these Jimmy Graham, all these receivers that Drew Brees has thrown to in the past. Michael Thomas is number 1 in terms of where he wants to go with the ball. But then you get the emergence of Traquan Smith, the rookie, going deep, making plays like we saw in college. He's a viable weapon. You've got this wrinkle.
10 for 157, by the way, a 94.2 PFF grade.
You've
for
got
Traquan.
this continual wrinkle that is Taysom Hill, who got 13 snaps again. Runs the ball, throws the ball badly.
They threw the ball down the field with him.
Runs pass patterns. They had him. I mean, he was open for a touchdown. Drew Brees missed him / the other Hill, Josh Hill. I'm not entirely sure which one he was aiming for, but either way, he missed him. And then that running back tandem, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara. I mean, the 4th and 7 play was a perfect example of how you just can't stop everything, right? They lined up. The Eagles legitimately double-teamed Michael Thomas in the slot like he was a gunner on the punt team.
Right.
2 guys either side of him, shut him down because it's 4th and 7. Of course they're going to go to Michael Thomas. Drew Brees takes a look at it and goes, "Oh, that's nice." Touchdown to Alvin Kamara deep down the
just
sideline.
drops a
Right.
diamond on him.
You can't stop this offense. This offense has now put up, it's like an NFL record, I think, for most points over a 3-game period.
Yeah.
It's, the 3rd highest all-time points average at the moment, behind the 2013 Broncos and some Rams team from the 50s. Wasn't that the graphic they put up?
1950 Rams. That one I can't believe. Yeah, look, just to put Drew Brees is the best quarterback in the NFL this year. I know there's a lot of people that will say Patrick Mahomes, and it's close. Like, Mahomes has been outstanding, but throw for throw, Brees has been absolutely incredible. I don't care what the touchdown totals say, because that's essentially the argument for Patrick Mahomes. Throw for throw, Brees has been incredible because 1 interception, only 5 turnover-worthy plays.
Say that again. 1 interception.
1 interception. He's got 24 touchdowns and 1 interception here after week 11.
Right.
which is incredible. So again, it's a real interception number. Only 5 turnover-worthy throws is it? And Rodgers only has 1 interception too.
Nathan Peterman threw one from his couch this weekend.
Seriously, I believe it. Peterman throws 3 and his passer rating goes up.
Right.
But look who he threw to yesterday. Traquan Smith had 13 targets, and he's playing great. I mean, give him credit. Michael Thomas, of course, but then Dan Arnold, Keith Kirkwood, Austin Carr, who we loved coming out of college, Josh Hill. It's not like they're I'm a big believer in the playmakers can elevate the quarterback, but then when quarterbacks are playing at a certain level, they make Keith Kirkwood catch 3 for 33. They make Dan Arnold catch 2 for 25. They make Austin Carr catch a touchdown. That's where Drew Brees is right now, at a different level of play. When we put stats out last week, by the way, I'm assuming we've got some crossover with Chris Sims and Lefko, their show. I put a screen stat out there, and apparently Sims and Lefko on their show were saying, no, Mahomes is the clear MVP. It can't be Brees. He throws all screens.
Right.
Screens and slants, that's it. Which is this generic term for, like, I've seen a couple screens and slants that have been successful. I haven't really.
Yeah, he said something like, I estimate 40% of his yardage, whatever, has come on screens. It's not 40%.
Chris Sims, you're wrong.
That was Lefko.
Lefko, you're wrong.
Okay.
Calling him out.
Oh, nice.
Called him out. If they need information, they can come to us. If they want the actual numbers.
We've got PFF grading on Chris Sims, so if we really want to call him out, we can go into the archives.
I like Chris. We hung out with Chris over at the Super Bowl a couple years ago.
Yeah, I met
nice
Chris
guy.
as well.
I like Chris.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if things get nasty between in a podcast beef that we're creating right now.
I'm starting a podcast beef.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When it goes bad, we can pull in the Chris Sims grading.
As much as I like Chris Sims, the human being, my goodness, I disagree with many of his football takes. I'm trying to be very polite, yet firm.
That's a terrible way of starting a beef.
Very polite, yet firm.
Okay.
I disagree with Chris Sims on football-related matters.
Vociferously.
90% of the time. I don't need a PFF grade for that. It's pretty much 85-90% of the time.
You're just doing what he did now.
40% of stats are made up.
You've got to go through and quantify all of his takes you disagree with.
Okay, I will. I'll put some numbers to my takes compared to
Michael Thomas is still catching over 90% of his targets.
That's insane.
90.
It's really insane.
It really is. So it sounds like one of those things. It's just, 90% of his targets. Yeah, that's a lot. But how a lot is that, right? Adam Thielen, who's having a ridiculously good season, is catching 75% of his targets. So 15% more than Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
It's an insane total. People do not catch 90% of their targets, ever.
Here's the one thing I'll do to pull back on the Drew Brees thing.
I do think back on the Twitter beef already.
No.
The podcast beef.
No, the beef's out there, Sims and Lefko. I don't even know Lefko.
Lefko's nice. I met him in the Bleacher Report offices.
Oh, so
they have better snacks than we do.
We're working our way up. We've got.
I know. I'm just saying.
Somebody bring me some M&Ms. Where are my M&Ms?
I'm just saying they have a better snack.
Give me some M&Ms.
Arrangement than we have.
I do. I'm sure they do. Drew Brees has been fantastic, but I do think it's this perfect storm of he's going to play 12 games in a dome, did I say? And when he goes outdoors, he's playing this terrible Bengals defense, and they play the Giants. So the schedule, who's going to slow them down? They got the Falcons this Thursday. They got Dallas. Dallas has a good defense, but it's Dallas indoors.
Yeah.
At Tampa Bay, who's horrible defensively. At Carolina, and then 2 home games against the Steelers and Panthers.
This is why I was saying that the rest of the season is really important for the Rams, because you don't want the Saints to be playing at home in the playoffs, right? I think the Saints are capable of going outside and playing well.
Are you telling me the Saints can't win a road game?
No. For the Rams, they do not want to have to go to New Orleans to win that game in the NFC Championship game.
Right.
They need that game to be at home. Now, it'll still be a hell of a game. The Saints are not exactly going to be an easy out, even if they have to travel on the road and go to Los Angeles. But it's a hell of a lot easier than it will be to go into the Superdome and win against this team, because that's terrifying.
Defensively, Marshawn Lattimore, interception, pass breakup. I don't know what the deal was. I mean, underrated in this whole Saints offense is incredible and unstoppable deal is how the Eagles scored 7 points with Carson Wentz at the helm, and they're depleted in their secondary. Look, there was a lot of passes breezed through where their corners were actually in good position, and they did this. They were like, oh, where's the ball? I don't know where it is. It was terrible.
Were abysmal.
But offensively, the Eagles should have been much better. Underrated in this whole thing was how bad Carson Wentz throwing arm punts left and right, and their inability to just move the ball. Carson Wentz's regression on third down is like just that's the difference in the Eagles' defense. He was unstoppable on third down last year.
Yeah.
This year he's stoppable on third down, and the offense just isn't the same.
So Eli Apple, after coming over in trade, first 2 games were pretty rough. Now, the first 2 were against the Minnesota Vikings and their receivers and Los Angeles and what they can do from a scheme point of view. But the next 2 games against the Bengals and the Eagles, who, okay, they're struggling right now, but both those teams should be able to pass the ball, right? I mean, Carson Wentz, Andy Dalton, they're 2 not bad offenses. Over the last 2 weeks, Apple has allowed 13 yards against the Bengals and 27 yards against the Eagles. So he's potentially actually starting to come around in this system.
And all we said was you have Lattimore on one side, who we think will get back toward that elite play, and then you have Apple, his former Ohio State teammate, on the other side, just needs to be better than Ken Crawley and P.J. Williams, who just had not been good at all.
PJ had a big game, though.
He did. I know, but like to that point, he hadn't been good. Player of the week a couple weeks ago when he got torched.
Oh, God.
So, Saints are the best team in the NFL?
Yes.
Saints are the best team in the NFL right now, 48-7 over the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go talk to our Bears friends because Chicago's the number 1 city for our podcast listeners, so we must appeal.
You can't bring them back on side now. It's too late. You burned those bridges last week, and you just have to accept that. You can't butter them up now after this win and try and get back in their good graces.
This isn't buttering them up. I'm gonna tell them how Trubisky also, once again, he threw a pick six worthy play just as bad as Kirk Cousins' actual pick six.
Are you about to spend the next 15 minutes again hammering on Trubisky?
No, I really wanted to talk about their defense.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Bears' defense. Are the Bears the best of the bad defenses?
The best bad defense in the league.
The NFL. They've been atop our grading for a while, but I think, just like the Redskins, we talked about, there's certain games that stick in your head where you just can't get over the fact that they got crushed or whatever it is. I think for the Bears, it was, they got smoked by the Dolphins offense led by Osweiler. They gave up, what they gave up to Miami? 31 to Miami and then 38 to New England. So on back-to-back weeks, they're giving up a ton of points. How could they be the best defense in the NFL? And I do think you have to adjust for their competition. They played the Jets. They played the Bills. They played the Cardinals. They did shut down a Tampa Bay Bucs team that's going to throw for about 6,000 yards this year. But that was crazy Fitz, right? That was Fitz's regression week. But are they the best defense in the NFL? The Bears. By our grading, they are. Just overall grade, not weighing anything.
Yeah. They have the capability, right? They've been getting better for a while. Khalil Mack was this catalyst to really kickstart what was happening on this defense. Last year, the entire secondary took this giant leap forward. All those young guys started to play well. They retained them in free agency. They managed to tie them down and roll into this year with the same group of guys, including bringing back somebody like Prince Amukamara, who is the perfect embodiment of that. Just get an average corner.
Right.
He doesn't have to be great. He just has to not get killed all the time.
Big Amukamara fans over here.
You can get beat every now and again. You can give up some plays because all cornerbacks are going to. The question is how many are you going to give up? And Amukamara consistently is average, right, across the board.
Yep.
Just as a reasonable starting corner, and that's an important thing. So they got that secondary tied down. They were moving better on the up front. They got guys like Akeem Hicks. Eddie Goldman has been better than we thought he would be coming out of college. And then the linebackers they've been attacking as well, right? You get Danny Trevathan in free agency. You get Roquan Smith in the draft. So they've been getting better. But then Khalil Mack just brings this whole new level of dominance and takes you from a reasonable defense that's moving in the right direction to suddenly he can take over games. And, he gets you to that point where your defense can completely win a game single-handedly, which is what happened against the Vikings. It's what happened for them before this season when Khalil Mack just goes on these runs. So, yeah, it's one of the few defenses in today's NFL that can win a game rather than expect the offense to do it and just keep them in a game.
The thing about Khalil Mack that's interesting, he battled injury, and you could actually look, if you guys have Premium Stats 2.0, all a part of your PFF Elite package, you go into the grading, and you could see where he got injured. He played injured at Miami, and he played injured against New England. So the two games that I highlighted that made me not believe as much in the Bears' defense, you could say, well,
busted up Khalil Mack.
Yes. Directly related to a three pressures over 2 weeks for Khalil Mack against Miami and New England. 47.8 grade, a 55 grade. Against Detroit last week, only a 63.9. Last night, though, against Minnesota, 91.5, a 97.2 against the run because of the forced fumble recovery. He's got 5 forced fumbles. That's the most he's ever had in his career.
Right.
But when you add it all up, it's the lowest grade of his career because of that stretch in the middle where he kind of disappeared due to injury. But when he's healthy,
yeah,
I mean, making that type of impact with the forced fumbles and the strip sacks, I mean, that's tough to find.
Those 2 injured games are the only games of his season where he hasn't had a sack. They represent 2 of the 3 games where he hasn't had a forced fumble.
That's crazy.
So
that's tough to sustain.
Right.
But to this point, I'm saying that's
certainly the forced
crazy.
Fumble part. I can see the sack thing sustaining just
because
he's generating a ton of pressure.
Yep.
But, yeah, basically this season, what you have had from Khalil Mack is a guaranteed sack and a guaranteed forced fumble outside of 2 games where he's been injured. And those are game-changing performances.
And they gave up over 30 in both of those games.
Yeah,
so there's something to that.
It's not even necessarily those plays. It's the sheer dominance and insane playmaking he's had. Like, the week before, he tossed aside a tight end chip block, then ran right the hell over Taylor Decker, left tackle for the Detroit Lions. Now, okay, apparently somebody stepped on Taylor Decker's foot, which is why he fell over, but still, Khalil Mack just ran through 2 guys, right?
Yeah.
Then this week, he literally tossed Riley Reef with one hand to the ground just in the course of a game. Like, he's absolutely wrecking people this season. And the crazy thing is, he may not even have been the most dominant player on this Bears defense yesterday because Akeem Hicks was doing the same thing inside. By the way, why do people think Pat Elflein is good?
I don't know.
Because he played all last season. And apparently if you play early in your career as a center, you're good. Whether you actually play well or not, if you're playing, you're good. Right? So he played.
I don't think people are great at evaluating offensive linemen. I think we are very good at evaluating offensive linemen. I'm biased. I think PFF knows, though.
Okay. He played last season, the whole year, really, and played badly. Gave up a lot of pressure. Centers do not give up pressure, and he gave up a ton of it. And he also kind of got his ass kicked in the run game. So this season, it was part of the thing. He was injured early in the year. Elflein's coming back. It's going to improve this offensive line. It's going to be better down the stretch. Elflein comes back, proceeds to have the same kind of ass kicking that he's had in his rookie year. And, even just the previous few weeks, we've seen him get bench pressed to the ground by Sheldon Rankins from the Saints. We saw Akeem Hicks run through him this week like he wasn't even there.
Akeem Hicks had a huge game.
He is not good.
I think the only thing you're hoping for, though, is we do see improvement from young interior offensive linemen who struggle early and can get better. He's at a rough start, though.
Yes, and if that was going to happen, which I admit can happen, I would like to see some suggestion that there's the upside. Right?
Red's bad, right?
Where is the suggestion of upside in his career so far? We've essentially had 2 half-decent games. One of them came against Detroit back when they had the worst defensive front in the game.
Yeah.
So I don't see this from Elflein, but he was one of the people that Akeem Hicks ran right through yesterday. Akeem Hicks was insane.
He was fantastic. Eddie Jackson had the pick 6. He's found his way to the football quite a bit. 92.4 overall grade for him. So the Bears with playmakers at every level.
Can you believe the Patriots let Akeem Hicks go?
No, I mean, so there will still be people who defend every move that Belichick makes. And they'll say, well, Belichick's never let somebody go who's had success elsewhere.
Better outside of New England.
Right. Akeem Hicks, absolutely.
Yes.
The only difference there is most of the time it's like New England has a homegrown player, they turn him into a star, and then they let them walk. Hicks is a little different. I think he was just 1 year over there, but they still let him walk.
Yeah.
They don't make those, like, they look at Jamie Collins, and he's not done well in Cleveland, and that's kind of been the trend most of the time with Belichick, but there have been other players who have had success elsewhere. Akeem Hicks is one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, like Richard Seymour had success elsewhere.
Sure.
But it would have cost a lot of money, right? So Akeem Hicks you could have had on the cheap like you did.
Yeah.
So that was one that you probably count as a mistake because they're not rushing the passer from the interior anything close to what Akeem Hicks can bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, the Akeem Hicks or the Richard Seymour thing was sort of that was going to be blockbusting money, and they let somebody else pay that.
And that's not necessarily the wrong move.
Right. And they didn't.
Even though he's good.
He wasn't as good outside as he was in New England.
That's
so
true.
I would say that overall is the right move. The Akeem Hicks thing, you had a guy essentially for peanuts you could have signed long-term for a very modest deal. Didn't, and now he's a superstar.
That's the key. Like Danny Woodhead, they let walk, and he was successful elsewhere. But they found ways to replace him without paying as much money. Akeem Hicks, though, could have been a nice, a cheap signing for New England. So, Bears, best defense? I mean, 3 cornerbacks all grading well between Amukamara, Bryce Callahan, Kyle Fuller.
Sure, all right. On the basis,
there's a lot going there.
On the basis that everybody starts at 15, the Bears might be the best number 15 ranked defense in the NFL.
Maybe they're 12th?
Ooh, I don't know.
Again, we refuse to give any team number 1 ranking.
Yeah. What about
in defense?
Kirk Cousins yesterday, right? Because this was, both of us tweeted essentially the same thing, which is this was the game that the Vikings, and we've talked about this before, this was the game that the Vikings brought him in for, right? You're down double-digit score, or double-digit points. You need the quarterback with the high variance, capable of making the big plays to pull them back from that deficit, because you get Case Keenum, and somebody actually pointed out on Twitter that Case Keenum did come back from double digits down yesterday.
Yeah, but you don't.
In the game, you said he had no chance of winning.
I know, but
anyway.
Yeah, because of fumbles and because of turnovers.
Case Keenum.
And like
Sam
a run
Bradford,
by Philip Lindsay where it looked like the Big 12 was playing defense. Come on, that's not Case Keenum.
Case Keenum, Sam Bradford, and Teddy Bridgewater are just the style of quarterback they are, which is very low mistake, low risk, and consequently high impact. Just doesn't bring them back from that kind of game, right?
Yep.
You bring in Kirk Cousins and you pay him all the money for a guy that averages out to the same kind of PFF grade because stylistically he's different. And what that gives you is the ability to make those big plays when you need it and bring you back from a game like that. And he threatened briefly to do it and then threw a pick six, which, of course, is the other end of the boom or bust scale.
So the funny thing is, I think first off, I tweeted it after I set the stage for my wife. I turned to my wife and said, this is it. This is why they're paying Kirk Cousins. This is great drama. This is, 8 in Chicago, crunch time. And I didn't even finish my sentence before he threw a pick six. And she's like, that's why they got him?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that didn't go great. But we said the same thing against Green Bay in week 2, the game that ended in a tie.
Right.
And we're like, this is the game.
And
got to
he
make
did.
the comeback.
He
but
did in that game.
But what did he do first? He threw a game-ending interception first, and then Clay Matthews breathes on him the wrong way. And it's now after he got the free 15-yard roughing the passer penalty, because you said volatile, right?
Yeah.
He got the bad one out of the way.
Yes.
And then he made great throw after great throw back in week 2 against Green Bay. If Eddie Jackson drops that pick six opportunity, Cousins probably dropping dimes in left and right. But this is not the what if game, but this is what happens sometimes in the NFL. Trubisky's near pick six was just as bad as Cousins' actual pick six, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
The Vikings dropped that, though.
I'm not mentioning Trubisky.
Why won't you jump in this Trubisky train here?
Because if I cut off this island and cast you adrift with it, it works out better for me.
We haven't even discussed. So last week, not only did I alienate all Bears fans.
Yeah.
I had Todd Gurley on his Instagram page.
You did.
Very angry at me.
He was upset. Because you said he wasn't MVP.
Yeah,
on TV, you said that.
I was on NFL Network. I said it.
Sitting there all slouched over.
I don't want to talk about my shoulders, all right? We don't have to bring it up. We'll talk about it later. Let's finish the Bears. Let's finish our Bears and Vikings and Cousins' thought. What's your Cousins' thought here?
So I've said this before, that I think he's very bad at making immediate, split-second, almost instinctive decisions, right?
That feels like a bad trade for quarterbacks.
It is. So, and you see it manifest itself in almost every game that Cousins plays. Sometimes it costs them. So if you're bad at making those quick split-second, immediate change of decisions, right? There's a bunch of different ways that can go. You're going to do something, and maybe it goes badly to the tune of an incompletion, or maybe it goes badly to the tune of a pick six, right? But something. It's all a question of what it costs you when you have those kind of brain glitches or brain farts, whatever you want to call them. I thought we saw a great example of it in this game where it was 3rd and 9, I think. He started to step up, had wide open. No, it was 3rd and 1. It was short. He had it wide open. He just needed to step forward and take the knee, and he would have kept the chains moving and put the Vikings in good situation. Instead, he tried to fit the ball into a tiny window to Stephon Diggs, who honestly could have come down with it but didn't, and it ends up being incomplete. The drive's done, essentially, right?
Right.
Now, a good top quality quarterback that you expect to make these decisions is going to take what's there on that play. They're not going to try and fit it into this tiny window, even though that potentially gets you a touchdown versus just keeping the drive alive. They're going to take the first down because it's being given to you. Why would you not take the first down? Cousins, every single game, just seems to have one or two plays where in a quick split-second decision, he glitches mentally and does the wrong thing. Now, sometimes that just costs you an incompletion, but sometimes that's where it turns into a pick six, and he has to dig himself out of an even deeper hole. So they brought him in because he has the capability of executing this comeback, but he's also volatile enough that he often doesn't.
And to this point, I think that's sound analysis. To this point, he's actually been pretty much what we said he would be.
Yeah.
He's grading at 81.8.
Which is the same kind of ballpark as all the quarterbacks that came before him.
And in 2016, that's the best grade we've ever given him, 80.6, so right in the same range.
Right.
We assumed he'd have a little bit better grade, and his stats are supposed to jump up a little bit. They have a touch, also with the rest of the league jumping up, and they were up until yesterday when he came down a little bit. The simple analysis, though, we talked about on the preview show, was his play under pressure. And I called it luck because, in the easiest terms, unstable, luck, something that needs to come down.
Yeah.
There was a great PFF graphic on the broadcast last night that showed high pressure rate, number one in yards, number one in touchdowns, all these different things. And that has to come down. It's just unsustainable. I mean, our nerdy statistical analysis on this whole thing predicts more games like that, essentially, for Cousins. He just can't. He's playing under pressure at an unsustainable rate. And last night, a passer rating of 46 under pressure, games like those are just inevitable. He can't do this. Like the Rams game, he was under pressure dropping dimes in. You just can't do that every single week. So these games are inevitable when you're playing behind that offensive line.
This was really the game that typifies what we've said about the Vikings, right? The play under pressure thing came back to haunt him. He wasn't actually under pressure. He was under pressure less in this game than he's been under pressure for most of his season. It was almost actually exactly the same numbers, right? 49 dropbacks, 21 under pressure. So that's basically working out as just a bit over 40%, right? When you double those numbers. And the offensive line was terrible across the board, except right tackle Brian O'Neill, who actually looks like he might be a viable right tackle for the Vikings, which...
That's encouraging.
Yeah, it means you got 1 out of 5. Now you just need 4 other viable players, and you're in business. So Brian O'Neill gave up 1 hurry, no sacks, no hits yesterday, which is by far the best performance on the line. But Cousins struggled under pressure, whereas previous to this game, he's been excellent under pressure. Interestingly, I think, though I haven't actually checked this number properly, that Stephon Diggs had 2 contested catch situations in that game, and I don't think he came down with either of them, which is, I think on the Thursday podcast, right, we just talked about how good that he was arguably the best contested catch guy in the league. I think he was 0 for 2, and both of them hit him in the hands. Like, he could have come down with both those plays, didn't come down with either of them. That's going to hurt Kirk Cousins' numbers because he's been used to putting those balls up, and seeing Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen come down with them, they weren't in this game.
Right.
Plus, he had that play earlier in the game. He missed Diggs on a deep play. That's been there earlier this season. So it's just this kind of perfect storm of everything that's been there for the Vikings before this game suddenly dissolving and disappearing, and then he makes the critical mistake that essentially precludes them from executing the comeback.
Can I finish Mitch Trubisky a point now?
Oh, no.
Let's just wrap it up. Here's Trubisky's game.
I believe Trubisky was excellent and fantastic.
Why are you
game.
Since when are you afraid of the fans?
I'm not afraid of the fans, but I'm already fighting battles on multiple fronts with fans this week.
Ooh, picking battles.
I'm letting you deal with the Bears people.
Trubisky with a 65.6 grade overall yesterday. That included he did a good job running the ball. I thought the boss, Chris, was trying to highlight He was highlighting PFF numbers when he was saying it, that he's really good when the first read's there.
Yeah.
Multiple reads, he's not. Our numbers back that up very well. The fact that he had 3 turnover-worthy plays, both interceptions, which were bad, and then what should have been a pick 6, which was worse. That was the worst throw that he made. And still graded at 65.6 is actually encouraging. I'm not encouraging, but that's actually pretty good because he did move the chains a lot with his legs, and he did make a number of key third down conversions throwing the ball. So overall, it was an okay game. And it was actually that grade when you have a 61.9 passer rating, a grade of 65.6 is actually pretty good. So for the first time all year, Trubisky actually graded a little bit better than the stats would show, even though he was still not very good last night.
Okay.
They did not win because of Mitch Trubisky.
He is really dangerous on the ground. Like,
he is.
What he does in terms of taking off is lethal. Like a Vikings defense did a reasonable job of putting him under pressure, of creating plays that should have caused the Bears offense to sputter out.
Yeah.
But multiple times, Trubisky was able to escape guys and get just enough to keep the chains moving. And that's what we're talking about. Like where Cousins took the step forward, and instead of taking the 2 yards that were there, moving the chains, just getting a fresh set of downs, he tried to do something special and it went to hell. Trubisky has been really good at just keeping the chains moving. So I need to get away from Donnell Hunter, and all I need is 3 yards before I can hit the ground, and we're good.
Yeah.
He's
Mitch would have
really
pulled it down
good at
10
that.
minutes earlier.
There was one play where they executed one of those typical rollout plays, multiple levels, and the Vikings had it absolutely blanketed. They had Eric Kendricks was all over, I think Trey Burton, whoever it was in the flat. Donnell Hunter was unblocked one-on-one heading towards Trubisky in the backfield. This play was toast for 90% of quarterbacks in the league, and it's not like Donnell Hunter is an unathletic specimen coming at you. And Trubisky was able to make him miss in the open field, get the 4 yards or whatever they needed to keep it going, and just keep those chains moving.
That's how David Garrard was.
Did you just call Mitch Trubisky David Garrard?
David Garrard was good.
Did you just call
legit.
him David Garrard?
Oh, if he cuts down on his turnover-worthy plays, he could be David Garrard.
Wow.
If he gets better, he could be David Garrard.
Oh,
David Garrard.
This is Steve. Direct all
David Garrard
complaints
was legit.
to @PFF_Steve.
David Garrard was good.
I'm just saying. I want no part of this conversation.
Check the PFF grades. Luckily, so we have a listener, a viewer, a live viewer, who luckily has access to the best football database in the world.
Okay.
So Neil Hornsby, who's watching live, is sending me some data.
How does he have nothing better to do on a Monday afternoon?
Don't question your boss and what he's doing on a Monday, but he is feeding me information, which is great. 10% of...
He's your researcher in this podcast?
I didn't ask for this. He volunteered some information through the Skype.
Okay.
And 10% of Breeze's passes are screens, and 13% of Patrick Mahomes' passes are screens. So it's pretty close.
So
and
less
actually,
than
right.
Mahomes.
So it's less than Mahomes. Is the point.
Well, that kind of ruins Sims and Lefko's
Look, Sims didn't
narrative.
say just screens.
It also wasn't Sims. Lefko.
But they didn't say just screens. They were talking about the system as a whole. But our analysis is perfect on this. Mahomes is a great combination of great scheme and playmakers and his ability to make plays outside of structure.
Yeah.
And the 13% screen pass number highlights that. And that includes the shovel passes and all those freebies that you get. And, Mitch Trubisky, the next David Garrard. We've spent a lot of time on these two games. We got to go rapid fire around the rest of the league here. We're not going to talk Raiders-Cardinals, right?
Damn Cardinals.
Is that right?
That's one of the two games that killed me this week in the picks.
Nobody cares about your picks.
They do. People care.
They care about your picks as much as they care about John Costco's fantasy team.
People might care about that.
John, stop tweeting about your fantasy team. All right, Cowboys, are they the front runner in the NFC East? Dallas Cowboys defeat the Falcons 22-19. We keep talking about this Cowboys defense. The defense is legit. Holds the Falcons to 19 at home in the Dome.
In the Dome in Georgia. Inside.
In Georgia. Matt Ryan not even having to play in Pennsylvania to only score 19.
Didn't have to go outside and still couldn't get it done. That coupled with the Washington injury, or the injury to Alex Smith, I think probably does make them the favorites, right? The Eagles, like I said, I think this week was a far bigger indictment of the Eagles than it was an endorsement of the Saints. Dallas have been rolling a little bit with that improved defense, with Amari Cooper making a difference to that offense, and then Washington just lost their quarterback, which means they're playing the remainder of this season with some kind of unholy combination of Colt McCoy and Mark Sanchez. who they just signed today, right, to back up
My
Colt
gosh.
McCoy. So that is horrific.
All right, let's talk about the entire NFC East as a whole here.
Yeah.
Because our resident New York Giants insider over here, Matt Stopsky, who's producing, has just sent me a note about a talking point in NYC, in New York City. They're saying the Giants are going to run the table and make the playoffs. That's what they're talking about today.
Who was talking about that?
Them in New York.
Come on.
People that Bart Scott and Francesa and our friend Maggie, they're probably all talking about, can the Giants run the table?
No.
New York sports radio is probably all talking about it.
All right. Why?
My favorite thing is when a quarterback plays the Tampa Bay Bucks, as Eli did yesterday,
Right.
and everybody's like, wow, Eli Manning, that's his best game of the season. The Bucks have given every quarterback their best game of the season. Trubisky threw for 6 touchdowns against them.
The Bucks are low
Breeze
key.
has had one of the best seasons of all time. His best game came against the Bucks in Week 1, statistically.
The Bucks are low key one of the worst teams in the NFL. They looked fantastic early in the season because they had a quarterback playing at a mind-blowing level who had great receivers to throw to. Now they've got 2 quarterbacks that can't stop throwing interceptions, so it doesn't matter that they have great receivers, which is the only good part of that team.
They're giving up 33 points per game.
Their defense is terrible. Their quarterbacks are now terrible, which invalidates the receivers who are good. Everything else sucks. So, no, of course the Giants can't run the table.
You don't think so?
No.
Eli's looking sharp.
Peyton Manning thought Eli was great in the detail breakdown, if you've seen that. You won't have because your ESPN Plus doesn't work.
I'm supposed to get
But
this
for our
complimentary
listeners
ESPN
whose
Plus.
ESPN Plus does work, they will have got a chance to see Peyton break down Eli, which it opened my eyes to the greatness of Eli. I must have missed this over recent seasons, decades, years. But apparently Eli's great. And really the breakdown just showed you how great he is, including when he's okay to just turn down simple completions and fire the ball in there because he's got a cannon of an arm.
What year was this analysis based off? Was it 2011, Eli, when he had a nice little arm on him?
2018, recently.
Interesting.
One interesting thing, in fact, the only interesting thing, if I'm being honest, that came out of this particular week's detail from Peyton Manning was where he talked about how quarterbacks use the crowd noise to figure out if they're about to get murdered by a defensive end.
Oh, well, you start to hear them.
So you hear everybody go, and he's like, uh-oh, that means something's coming that I can't see. I need to move and get rid of the ball. And we've talked before about how Peyton Manning was the statistic that was his was the sack percentage thing, right? It was the percentage of pressured plays that become sacks because he knew when to get rid of the ball. He knew how to get rid of the ball. And part of it is that, right? He hears the crowd. He was like, you think every crowd reacts the same, right? You hear suddenly a guy is whooped at left tackle and there's a guy bearing down on the quarterback. Every crowd in the National Football League goes, and he's like, as soon as I hear that, I'm like, uh-oh, gotta move, gotta get rid of the ball.
That's unbelievable.
That was interesting.
He says quarterbacks do that. It really was probably only him. Like, who else can have this computer going on, knowing the coverage and where you're throwing it, and also taking in the crowd noise at the same time?
And you add that to the PFF data that basically points to the same stuff.
Yeah.
And suddenly you get a combination.
So, NFC East.
Yeah.
Cowboys, we talked last week, they probably have the best defense in the NFC East. One of the best in the NFC right now. Leighton Vander Esch playing at an incredible level. Byron Jones playing great. The Giants, people think they're going to make a run because they just beat the Bucks and the 49ers.
No, let's stop. No, we're not. I'm not countenancing that. That doesn't
Eli's
happen.
putting up good
It's
numbers
not a
this
thing.
year now.
Nobody thinks the Giants are running the table.
You're going to hear people say this is the best statistical season of Eli Manning's career. They're going to be saying this.
Stop it.
He's winning despite the offensive line. Now, he was under pressure 6 times yesterday against the Bucks, 4 of which turned into sacks.
Yes.
So maybe the offensive line isn't that much of a disaster.
So
he is actually surrounded by these really good playmakers. We talked about this playmakers elevating him statistically.
Look, the Giants' remaining schedule at Philadelphia. Okay, we talked about how they're not great, but at Philadelphia.
But they smoked the Giants the first time
against the Bears. At Washington, again, the Washington just lost a quarterback, but it's on the road. Against the Titans at home. At the Colts, and then against the Cowboys. They could lose all of those games.
They're winnable, though.
Are they? Can they beat the Bears?
Winnable games.
I would be amazed if they win more than 2 of those
There is
games.
hope in New York. The Saquon Barkley.
There's
led.
no hope in New York.
Saquon was really good.
He was. He was the first guy since, what was that stat? The first guy since like 1990-something or 80-something to get both a receiving and a rushing touchdown as a rookie. I'm amazed he hadn't already done it this season.
What? Like in a game?
Yeah.
That hadn't happened?
Apparently not.
Check your sources, please.
I'm going to go dig up what that was because I can't really remember.
I'm not even that interested because that sounds like something that happens like once a week.
Right. It did.
So the Eagles, we talked about them being a disaster. The Giants are going to win out. The Cowboys are solidly in control. I mean, I just love the optimism. And then Redskins fans were like, Colt McCoy led us to our first comeback. They at least had a lead change in this game. It took poor Alex Smith with his leg falling off, and I feel bad for him. That was bad. But then Colt McCoy comes in, sparks that offense. Colt McCoy, I think he's one of the better backups in the NFL.
Yeah,
he could have a Case Keenum type. Yeah, I know. He could have a Case Keenum type season, on either end of that spectrum. I'm not waiting for you to look this thing up. I'm not
going to look it up because it's an interesting.
It's not that interesting. I'm not waiting for this.
Fine.
The NFC East is a disaster. I think the Cowboys are the front runners here. Is that right? Now, I'm just not even talking to anyone. I'm talking to myself because you're researching the worst stat in history. This is a terrible podcast. Can we talk about the Jaguars' meltdown?
Ah, damn it. I knew that was going to happen.
Well, yeah, we have to talk about the game. They melted down, and it ruined your picks. We have to talk about it.
It ruined my picks. They were, 16-6 up, and I said at that point they're going to find a way to screw this up, and that's exactly what happened.
I can't believe Big Ben is surpassing Trubisky as the guy with the best stats for the worst grades.
Yeah.
A 60 – I mean, look, his stats weren't great yesterday anyway, but there was a point where he threw the 78-yard touchdown or whatever it was, and his passer rating went up to 38 or 39. That's how bad he was early in the game.
Have you ever seen a more unathletic sight than Ben Roethlisberger flopping into the end zone like a beached whale?
That was great.
Trying to leap out of the water.
I don't want to call anyone out on it.
No?
You highlighted one for me yesterday that you saw.
Yeah, I
on
did.
national TV.
No.
We won't highlight that, though. Big Ben, he just finds a way to win.
He does. Apparently the way this time was to basically launch himself like a walrus.
This was the game.
The end zone.
So this was the game where if you're like the PFF people who say the run game's overrated and all that stuff, this is like your prototype game. I mean, the Jaguars, when they're putting their game plan together this week, this was perfect for them, right? They're like, all right, we're going to run the ball, keep the ball away.
For Fournette.
Yeah, 28 for 95.
We're gonna 3.4 yards per carry.
We're gonna keep the ball away from the opposing offense. And look, when you have Blake Bortles as your quarterback, you have to do this to a point. Like, here's the thing: if you had to run the Jaguars' offense and Blake Bortles is your quarterback, someone has assigned him to you, Sam. You have to come up with a game plan to win games with him. You almost have to try to win like this, right? Or do you put the ball in his hands more often and just hope?
Their top 3 running backs combined for 41 carries in this game.
So this is what I'm saying. They had 41 carries for 162 yards. The Steelers carried the ball 10 times, one of which was Ben Roethlisberger's win. So 9 times with their running backs, right?
Honestly,
for 26 yards.
If I was
yards.
stuck with Blake Bortles as my quarterback, I would run an offense that actually utilized him in the running game more and ran more of the Lamar Jackson game plan.
No, the Trubisky game.
Or the Trubisky game. Okay, fine. So he's not an unathletic quarterback, right? And I don't really care if it exposes him to hits because I'm stuck with Blake Bortles.
Well, you would have started
quarterback.
Cody Kessler anyway.
But
You'd
whatever, right?
Cody.
It's not like Blake Bortles goes down and you're like, oh, there goes the season. Right? If you're stuck with him, to hell with it. Let's expose him to some hits because he can actually do something useful.
There's something to the
legs.
QB running game because it opens up everything else.
Right.
So the point of this whole thing is if as they're drawing up the game plan and you're like, guys, you're going to run 41 times for 160, you're going to control the ball for the majority of the game, and you're like, great, it's all going to go perfect, except you're only going to be up 9 late in the game. That's the problem. You're only going to have –
you just don't screw it up.
Right. That's the whole thing. Whereas a pass-first game plan, when that goes right and you pass the ball well, your chances up you're at multiple touchdowns. So that's the issue. So many things went right, and you still only put up 16 points.
Yeah,
is the problem. At some point, you just score more points. You have to score more points. So Bortles was rough, and we've seen this game plan where Bortles has executed and just made key 3rd and 5s and 3rd and 7s and whatever. It's just so inconsistent week to week.
Right. And
with Bortles.
The other problem is when you're facing an offense that is that potentially explosive,
you can only hold them down
right.
for so
At some
long,
point, they're going to get something. So you need to be more than one score ahead. You
Yes.
need to actually be out of sight because they're going to have, particularly when they get to the point where they're chasing the game.
Right.
Like, honestly, a large part of this is you really don't want a lot of these offenses to have to be in a position to chase the game because they're good at that.
Well,
They're in this situation where that's what they do best.
That is the argument for just pass the ball a million times anyway. And this is the stuff, George and Eric will tell you every time they run the numbers and stuff. Because coaches are in this, I need balance, and I need a run game and all that stuff, and they try to concoct this perfect game plan. And I'm not saying the Steelers did, but they try to create this perfect game plan. It doesn't work. They fall behind. They forget about the run, and they just start chucking it all over the field, and they make a comeback. It's not because the defense is playing prevent the whole time. It's because if you pass the ball every single time, you're probably going to score more points than if you run the ball.
Imagine for a second you put the Chiefs in a situation where they're 2 scores down. That's the last thing you want to happen.
That's terrifying. No, you hope that they run the ball more just to get the ball out of Mahomes and their playmakers' hands.
Right.
And then maybe you've got a chance.
We've managed to put the Chiefs in a position where they need to air it out every single play.
It is funny. And look, not every game's the same, and this is just one of those game flow moments that, when Bortles has a 44.6 grade on 18 attempts, like you got no shot no matter how much you control the ball with the run game and the offense. As far as the AFC goes, the Steelers right now in line for the number 2 seed, and I know they still have to play the Patriots. The Patriots are the number 3 seed right now, tied with the Chargers.
Known as their kryptonite.
Well, the Patriots are the 3 because the Chargers are not division leaders. But New England fans are worried about that. They're afraid to go on the road. They never go to the Super Bowl when they have to go on the road. So they have to play the Steelers still. But that loss to Tennessee last week has the Patriots fans really worried about home field advantage stuff.
Jalen Ramsey got an interception in this game that was like a carbon copy of the one he had a year ago against the Steelers.
Yeah, over the
Steelers.
middle.
The Steelers have like 2 teams who appear to be their kryptonite. One is the Patriots, who they just can't seem to knock off, and the other one is the Jags, who really do seem to have figured out how to slow down and really stifle the Steelers' offense.
Kind of. I mean, they gave up 1 million points in the playoffs,
but they also
scored.
Dominated their defense in the playoffs. Like the Jags' offensive line had the game in the playoffs that everybody seemed to think they were having every single week,
right?
Just because they run the ball 50 times.
Dominant.
Yeah, they legitimately blew that Steelers' defensive line off the line of scrimmage every single play. And then this week they should have won that game and somehow conspired to lose it. But again, they really stifled that offense.
So as I said in the pregame, Steelers are hot.
Yeah.
They're going to win.
We don't appear to have gone too rapid fire.
It's not rapid fire at all.
No.
Let's touch on the Colts. They had a dominant game, 38-10 over the Titans. Blaine Gabbert had to come in for Marcus Mariota. The big story here, Andrew Luck not sacked again. I think it was the 4th straight game or 5th straight game. Speaking of stats that you saw yesterday, did you see that stat?
What's that?
So there's like a handful of quarterbacks who have 5 straight games where they have not been sacked. Andrew Luck's now one of them.
Right.
If I read it correctly. The most recent to do it, I believe, is Mark Rippon.
Okay.
It's
going back a while.
So there's a bunch of guys. With like 5 straight games, no sacks.
Mm-hmm.
The top game with no sacks, the top streak, is Dan Marino, with 19 games. 19 straight. That's insane.
Quick release, Steve.
My God. But that's in like the 7-step drop era. That's incredible. So anyway, we had the Colts as the number 4 offensive line coming into the week. Andrew Luck's quicker release and quicker decision-making has helped them. It's like a completely different Colts team right now.
Their line allowed 2 hurries this week.
That's insane.
That's it. 2 hurries.
It's very impressive what they've done in Indianapolis.
That's nothing. 2 hurries is like absurd.
So if the Texans are ahead of them by multiple games, but if the Texans hadn't, squeaked out a few wins, we're talking about the Colts like really being on their heels for the AFC South, but the Texans have built themselves a little bit of a buffer room here, and they don't have the worst schedule down the stretch.
Yeah. We said a couple of weeks ago, everybody was talking about this revamped offensive line, how well it was playing. We're like, well, okay, they haven't really been tested yet. They've played a bunch of kind of bad pass rushes, and they've been able to hold those well. Now they've played some pretty good pass rushes and some pretty good defensive fronts, and they're still performing at this level. Like, it's really quite impressive how good this offensive line is looking, and that offense period is looking good because of this. Again, it's all this marriage of scheme and quarterback. They've had talent. They've had Andrew Luck. They've had T.Y. Hilton. They've had impressive players. Now, the offensive line has been a problem. It's been the thing that's been kind of holding them back for years. That's been heading in the right direction and is now definitely in the right direction. But you marry those two things together. You've got the scheme, and you've got Andrew Luck and those offensive weapons playing that well, and they look really formidable because of that.
This makes me think, though, because remember when Andrew Luck got hurt in 2015 and Matt Hasselbeck came in,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they weren't giving up pressure again because Hasselbeck got rid of the ball? I mean, there's something to that, right? You can protect your offensive line to a point.
Quickest time to release this week, Luck.
Yeah, so that's a factor. It's like the offensive line deserves credit, but I think the quarterback and the scheme is more important. That's why Peyton never got sacked, not because he had great O-lines, but because it was him. Has Andrew Luck has he been miscast his whole career as this Ben Roethlisberger type of 7-step drop, extend plays, take the big hits because you're big and strong and get the ball down the field, instead of being the quick-minded Stanford grad? He's supposed to be this Brady Manning, quick computer brain type of guy, right? And he gets Bruce Arians deep drops, and he gets Pep Hamilton and these deep drop type of systems that ask a lot of him in the drop back passing game, when he could have just been more efficient in the 3- and 5-step game a little bit more.
Yeah, and we've seen it. We've seen it in his career before. When right at the start of this whole injury saga, when they had to protect him a little bit because he got busted up, they ran a few games where they were doing this quick passing thing, and those were the best games of his career, by and large. He played really well in that quick passing system, and if for some reason they went back to the thing they wanted to do, which is we'll go back to these 7-step drops, and it'll all be on Andrew Luck, and he's good enough to overcome it. But he may be a much better player if you give him a quick passing game, and that's how you work, particularly if it's a quick passing game that knows what it's doing. Like, it's not nothing but quick passes.
It's not just do 3-step drop, but it's
it's a sophisticated passing scheme within a quick passing offense, and consequently you get him backing up the best grade of his career.
All right, let's touch on Panthers-Lions quickly. Cam Newton did play a pretty good game.
Yes.
But he was very inaccurate on the throw to win the game.
Yeah.
That was an overthrow.
It was. Because it went over his intended receiver.
We don't need to trash Cam Newton and his accuracy. He's been better this year. They're doing good stuff. They're doing good stuff with the scheme. I mean, DJ Moore turned a 15-yard out into, an 82-yard reception or whatever it was. That was fantastic. DJ Moore was outstanding. But, man, Cam needs to hit that throw. I mean, that's a season-changing miss. Not to put everything onto one throw. We talked about Aaron Rodgers earlier in the game. He had a season-changing miss against Seattle. I think Cam had a season-changing miss, too, on that 2-point conversion.
Yeah, he did. It's not – he's been playing better, and it's not to say that he's the same guy he's always been. I think he has been dramatically better this year, though the people that think he's as good this year as he was in his MVP season, I don't know what you could possibly be looking at to suggest that. The numbers might be comparable, but he is not even in the ballpark of the same level of quality as he was that year.
It's not close. It's honestly not close. Right now he's tied for 13th with Carson Wentz with a 77.9 passing grade. 13th is kind of where Cam's been. And again, I keep pointing back to the PFF system. His grade is better than it's been in recent years. But his stats are much better because of the supporting cast.
Right.
And the style. In the scheme.
He was genuinely fantastic that 2015 season. He has not been as good this year. But if you go back and you look at the box scores, which is what I suspect a lot of people are doing, in 2015, his overall passer rating was 97.5, and this year it's 102.7. So obviously he's playing as well, even though he clearly wasn't.
Yeah, and 102.7 is like 12th or something in the NFL these days. He is not playing as well as he did in his MVP season of 2015. It's not particularly close. But this is the best we've seen Cam Newton play since 2015.
Yeah,
that's the fair analysis.
He is better this year, and he has a better supporting cast this year, which has been one of the things we've been talking about throughout the entirety of his career, is that they have systematically failed to figure out the best way of making use of Cam Newton. It's, let's get him a bunch of 6'5" guys so we can't overthrow them. And then it's, well, that's not working because those guys can't get open, so let's Let's draft a whole bunch of running backs and give him a bunch of easy passes to hit. And so, well, he's just not really good at that.
Well, but they're starting to do that combined with
They do some of that, but
DJ Moore separating.
Right, exactly. So the real answer is to just get some receivers that will get open in the course of running patterns down the field, which is where Cam Newton is going to be at his best.
So they lose to the Lions 20-19, and the Raiders beat the Cardinals. Congrats. And then the game I said shouldn't even be close, the Denver Broncos pulled it off against the Chargers. That's a big loss for the Chargers.
The term you used was Denver has no shot at winning this game.
Oh, yeah, the Chargers completely outplayed them, but, a couple fluky plays here and there. We haven't even gotten into Lamar Jackson in his debut. We don't have a ton of time to break it down. Ran the ball a ton.
Yeah.
We talked about building an offense around him. Kind of some classic Lamar stuff. We're going to have Zach Robinson do a full video breakdown on the YouTube channel if you want to see it. Give me your 30-second Lamar take, though.
11 straight carries to open this game. This was exactly the Lamar game you expect to see, right? The only thing missing was like one big play with his arm that I guess you expect to see somewhere in the Lamar Jackson lexicon. He's got that play in him. We just didn't see it.
That's why the passing grade still ended up 45.
Right. We saw a pretty terrible play or two. We saw some vintage Lamar in terms of escaping in the pocket, in terms of manufacturing second chances. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it did not. Like there were plays where he escaped, delivered a first down pass. It was really nice. It was also one where he got out of a sack from Jordan Willis, escaped to the left field and then almost threw an interception. Like it was a terrible pass that should have been punished. But this was basically your standard Lamar game. He is devastating on the ground. He can make some things happen with his arm, and we just didn't see the high-end play with his arm in addition to that, which I think is there. But this was also the Ravens at one point broke out RG3 as a wide receiver. I'm pretty sure they're just trolling people at this stage.
Yeah, probably. Lamar had 24 carries, only 3 of which were actual scrambles.
Yeah.
So again, he's not just running around. Those are 21 designed runs, 3 scrambles for 9 yards, but 21 designed runs for 108 yards. It's probably more hits than I'd like to see him take.
Yeah.
But how much does that open it up for Gus Edwards, who comes in, 17 carries for 115 for him. He did force 8 missed tackles on those 17 carries, one of the best running backs of the week. Did he win running back of the week? He's got to be up there. I didn't check it yet. But that's the type of Lamar offense we're talking about.
You do also have to factor in just how bad this Cincinnati defense was in terms of actually defending against him. So, for example, there was a 3rd and 4 play that the Bengals ran 2-man coverage against. Now, for anyone that's not kind of familiar about that, 2-man is man coverage across the board with 2 high safeties, right? And why that's important when you're talking about a running quarterback is man coverage generally, players are focusing their eyes on the receiver. They're not looking at the quarterback. So in general, man coverage is a little bit of a threat for a quarterback to take off and run against. 2-man is specifically so because you've got an extra defender out of the box. You've got 2 high safeties instead of 1, and everybody's in man coverage. So basically it's an open invite to run right up the middle of the defense because 4 guys are coming. You're going to be able to pick them up with 5 blockers, and then there's just a giant acre of real estate in front of you for you to run into. Now, 3rd and 4, when you only need 4 yards, that's the last coverage in the world you should be running. And yet that's what the Bengals ran. Lamar Jackson just ran up the middle for 21 yards. That's terrible, terrible play calling on defense, and yet the Bengals gave that to Lamar quite a bit in this game.
Yeah, not great. We'll have the full Lamar breakdown on the YouTube channel. So that'll do it for us this week. That's Week 11 in the books. We're going to try to get your preview pod for Week 12 out earlier for your Thanksgiving travels. And I want to hear, when do you guys listen to podcasts during Thanksgiving week? So send us a note.
Let us know.
Let us know at PFF_Steve. He's at PFF_Sam. Get to ProFootballFocus.com for your PFF Elite package. You get all these grades and fun goodies. Thanks to everybody for listening. Happy Thanksgiving week. We'll talk to you again probably Wednesday, Sam, real early this week. Bye, Neil.